Good day. I am Mr. Joseph Amon, the tutor responsible for Social Science 6, and I'm going to present to you this exam-based contact session for this part of the module, Social Science 6. This presentation is for all three exams, April 2019, August 2019, as well as November 2019. So this presentation is not a scope, but it is just a guide for the examination for the students. And it covers all modules. The entire modules should be studied for the examination, and all modules are equally important. They are equally important. So students should not concentrate only on the ones that I'm going to touch on, but on the whole module and all the units. Unit 1, students should focus on the following part. In Unit 1, the features and meaning of the World Peace Treaties. So there were various treaties in searching for world treaties, but there are some that were very important, and I'm going to highlight a few points here. The first is the first point here that students should focus on is the Treaty of Versailles and its impact on Germany. This part is very important. So here students should look at the impact, especially the negative impact that the Treaty of Versailles had on the entire Germany, its economy, and so forth. Here you should highlight all the elements that were negative of this Treaty of Versailles towards Germany in itself. Then the next point to focus on in Unit 1 is the League of Nations. The League of Nations is entirely important. All phases of the League of Nations are important. The successes of the League of Nations, the failures of the League of Nations, as well as the weaknesses of the League of Nations. It's very important in all three examinations to take note. The League of Nations successes, failures, as well as weaknesses should be made sure that you understood those parts. And then also the conclusions of the League of Nations. How successful, what were the end of the League of Nations? How did it end up? Was it successful? Was it a failure in the end? How was it concluded? The end result should also be looked at. When we take a look at Unit 2 of this module, Unit 2 is about causes for the collapse of international peace in 1939. So the search for international peace during this period of time was hindered by several factors. And one of the factors that you should focus on are the following. The Saar and the Rhineland. The Saar and the Rhineland was one of the factors that played a major role in searching for peace and searching for real peace in the end, to end the tension that was building up towards the World War, Second World War. So the Saar and the Rhineland were very, very potential areas, and they were countries who wanted to have these areas because they were so potentially rich in certain things. So hence it is important for students to look into this, why the Saar and the Rhineland was important in this, in the search for peace, for international world peace. The Munich Agreement should be focused on also. An agreement was signed called the Munich Agreement. What was the purpose of signing this agreement? Very important, students. You should look into the Munich Agreement. Who were the parties that had to benefit from this agreement, and what was the outcome of the Munich Agreement? Also in this unit, Unit 2, students should focus on the Russia-Germany Non-Aggression Pact. Also looked into that, very important in this unit, to touch on and to make sure you know why this Non-Aggression Pact was made between Russia and Germany. There were specific reasons. Who would benefit from this Non-Aggression Pact? So a certain country, for her it was very beneficial. So make sure you find out, you read through this part and you focus on that. Then the next point in Unit 2 is the Polish crisis. We know that there was a problem in Poland. The Polish crisis in Europe was there to create tension, and it was happening just before the Second World War. It created tension, and eventually it led to the start of the Second World War. So students should look into the countries that were involved in the Polish crisis and what was the outcome of this crisis. Then the next point in Unit 2, policy of appeasement. The policy of appeasement, also very important. Make sure that you know why this appeasement policy was signed and between which countries and the outcome of it. So students, please make sure you focus on these parts of Unit 2. Unit 3 of this module is about the origins and relationship during the Cold War. And here you should focus on the first part, which is 1, causes of the Cold War in 1945. So these causes, there were certain things that were happening that triggered the start of the Second World War, and then also as we are focusing on now the Cold War between certain countries. There were certain developments that happened in 1945, so please look into the causes of the Cold War and between, as we know, it was between two big countries, the biggest countries in terms of warfare and military setup, etc. Another point to look into is NATO and the Warsaw Pact. These agreements, these developments are on two opposite sides. NATO on the one side was created by one set of countries that were afraid of certain things, and then the Warsaw pact was then again created by the opponents. So students should make sure that they looked into the differences, the similarities of these two agreements, and why these agreements were then signed. Unit 4 is on the structure. Students should focus on the structure and operations of the United Nations. When we talk about the UNO, United Nations Organization, should be studied entirely. The whole setup, the structure, the bodies, the failures, as well as the successes should be looked into. So this part, in a nutshell, is very, very important. It should be approached as a whole, and there is no shortcuts here. So make sure you know Unit 4 and the structure and all the operations of the United Nations Organization. Unit 5, here we focus on the Namibian history from 1884 until 1990. So here, the first point to focus on here strongly is German colony and colonial rule and occupation. So Germany as a colony, we know that they came to Namibia to rule and to occupy. So all the operations should be taken note of here. Second point here to focus on in Unit 5 is Namibia as a mandate to South Africa. Here we know that Namibia was given as a mandate to South Africa by Britain. So here we should focus on this period when Namibia, or then Southwest Africa, was given as a mandate to South Africa. Please look into the positives and the negatives of this part for Namibia. Then the next part of Unit 5 to focus on, students should focus on apartheid and its impact on Namibians. As we know, apartheid was brought in by South Africa through the National Party, but with the intentions, there were some bad intentions. So here, the impact refers mainly to the negative, bad intentions of South Africans towards the Namibian country. So please look into all the negative factors that apartheid had on Namibia. Then the next part to focus on is Namibia itself as a country. Here we look into the success story. Please focus on the independence of Namibia. As from 1990 onwards, the celebrations, the implementation of Resolution 435, and then we should look at the period after independence. So there was a period of independence as from 1990, and then you should also look at the period afterwards. What happened? Was it successful? Was it fruitful? Whatever. Then we come to Unit 6, political developments in Southern Africa and South Africa. So here the first part to focus on for students is the apartheid and Mandela era. So we know that apartheid was brought in through the National Party, but it was countered by one of the main members of ANC, the man who brought the ANC alive, Nelson Mandela. All these developments, all the operations of Nelson Mandela towards apartheid should be looked into in this part. Then the next part to focus on is apartheid laws. During this area of apartheid, this era of apartheid, there were a number of laws that were introduced. And these laws were known as the apartheid laws. These laws were very negative towards the development of democracy in Namibia. So students are advised to look into all these laws and make sure that you study these laws for the exams, April, August, as well as the supplementary exam. Then the next point under Unit 6, very important, is then Botswana. The Botswana case. Botswana as a country also gained independence. So students should look into the operations, how the independence was approached, all the developments during the period of the Botswana independence, and then also afterwards, after the era after independence in Botswana. And just to link it up with Namibian independence, students are advised to make sure that they compare the independence of Namibia with the independence of Namibia and compare it in terms of all the similarities, and then also in terms of all the differences of these independence celebrations and the period and everything, even prior to independence, during independence, and after independence. All the differences as well as similarities. Then the next point here under Unit 6, we looked into Zambia as a country. Zambian independence and the economy of Zambia. So here we should focus on the independence of Zambia, the period, the presidents, the people involved in bringing independence towards Zambia, and the economy. The Zambian economy was driven by certain positive developments. What were these positive developments? Students are advised to look into it. There were some positive economic developments that were driving the economy at this time. So Unit 7 then is about the Weimar Republic and Nazi Party. Now we are going to Germany. Weimar Republic was then, the first point here to focus on is the establishment of the Weimar Republic in 1918. So this, we know this name was given to the German Republic's parliament. So we should look into the establishment of this parliament and the factors, the people that were involved, the positives and the negative factors about establishing a national assembly during this period of time. Also, we should focus on the next point, very important, Hitler and the Nazi Party. So Hitler came up as a very important and prominent person during this period of time. As a political person, he started from scratch. So all in all, students should look into Hitler and then also his Nazi party. How did this party came up? How did it develop? So these are some of the important points in Unit 7. Hitler and the Nazi party that he started from scratch. Unit 8, the history of the USA, also to be focused on by the students. The first point to focus on here is Roosevelt and the New Deal. This is the point here. Roosevelt was the current president during this time, and he brought about a new deal that was about economic programs that he brought in to the country because of bad economic situation in the United States of America. So students should look into these programs that was brought in by Roosevelt. Did it work? Was it positively activated into the economy, etc.? When we looked into Unit 10, Unit 10 is about skills for historians. Here, the first point under Unit 10 is then the sources for history. And under sources for history, we should look into the categories of historical sources. Now here we should make sure we differentiate between the various sources. There are two main sources, two main categories. Here we have the primaries and we have the secondary sources. So we should make sure we distinguish and we differentiate clearly between these two categories and then the sources. Then the second point here that we have under Unit 10, skills for historians, is the types of sources. In history, we are having various types of sources. So students should make sure that they know these various sources, and then also that they should differentiate and be able to explain every source on its own. So it's very important, these various types of sources. I thank you very much. This is the end of history, the first module, module 6.